Like, imagine being 23 years old and having to assert your boundaries to your toxic parents, and also at the same time being scared that you're going to lose your financial lifeline to like life, And how do you have that conversation with your parents about, look, I love you guys, but you guys are a hot, toxic mess. And I don't want to be involved because part of what the writer says too is that he's decided to discontinue these trips with his parents altogether. Like he's had enough and he doesn't want to go on these trips anymore. That's a challenge for a 23-year-old to be able to identify the boundaries, separate the money from the relationship, and come to the table to have that conversation.
Welcome to Always and Never About the Money. Are you ready to embark on a journey that will forever change the way you perceive money? Well, get ready because we're about to dive deep into the fascinating world of finances and human behavior. I'm your host, Chelsea Williams and Money Whisperer. I'm here to help you realize what your money story is telling you and how you can change it. But hold on tight, because this is not the dull black and white talk about money. We're going to splash all the color into this typical nap-inducing conversation. On Always and Never About the Money, we're going to explore the intricate relationship between money and our daily lives. From the impact history has left on us and how we still manage it, how your habits shape your money, and what beliefs are driving your habits, choices, and relationships, to the deeper values and emotions we've come to attach to it. We're going to unravel it all. Through insightful conversation and personal anecdotes, we'll bring you the expert insights, real-life stories, and meaningful thought-provoking ideas that will inspire you, educate you, and initiate some serious perspective change when it comes to your money. Remember, money is just a tool. Together, we'll untangle the web of emotions, beliefs, and values we've come to attach to it and find a new perspective on how it can enhance our lives. So whether you're looking for motivation, practical advice, or a good laugh, Always and Never About the Money's got you covered. Thank you for joining us in this transformative journey. Get ready to challenge your beliefs and embark on a financial exploration like no other. Without further ado, let's kick off the episode of Always and Never About the Money. Hey, welcome back to Always and Never About the Money. I'm your host, Chelsea Williams, Money Whisperer, truth teller, and your guide on this journey to uncovering the real story behind your finances. We have more Q&As from Am I the AssHole series, where we go out and find people who are asking, am I an asshole because I'm doing this or not doing this with my money or the people that are involved? So today we're deep diving into something we don't always talk about when it comes to money: the unspoken dynamics of family, power, and influence. What happens when money isn't just a tool, but a weapon, when it's used to control, manipulate, or buy loyalty? In this episode, we'll explore the emotional and psychological weight of financial influence, especially within families. I'm going to share insights on how our money stories are shaped by the people closest to us, whether it's our parents, partners, or the generations that came before us. And I promise, we're not here for a dry lecture. This is real talk, real stories, and a whole lot of perspective shifts that might just change the way you see your own financial relationships. So buckle up. This is going to be a powerful one. Let's get into it.
More or less, this writer is the girlfriend of a man who has a family that is admittedly alcoholics and kind of using money to get what they want out of their son. And so I kind of see this as two different things. There's a lot of toxicity happening in the family, but the word that I would use is financial control, which I think happens a lot, especially for someone who's like fresh out of college and depending on someone else to help get them to a place where they can establish their own financial dependence. And I would imagine that happens a lot because a lot of people still have faith in college and they have really good intentions sending their kids to college. And so they kind of use money as leverage to make sure that they're, and again, they have good intention. And it's like, I want you to finish college and I'm going to help pay for it, but you have to finish college. You have to do these things. And in this scenario, so the story goes into the fact that her boyfriend's parents prioritize family first and put out this image on social media that they're this like happy family that takes trips all of the time. But then she's talking specifically about a trip where they went to a cabin and how in private, these alcoholic parents continue to fight and argue and battle each other behind the scenes. And so I think that there's a moral struggle in this story outside of the money that's like, I don't want to be a part of this toxicity. Like, this is a toxic situation. It's not how I want to live my life. But to a certain extent, her boyfriend feels like he has to entertain it, not only because it's family, but also because they're helping him financially. And she goes on to explain that, like, we can't support ourselves financially without them. And so it's almost like, at what point, when you need the financial support from people that you don't morally agree with, how do you set boundaries in that situation? And that's a tough one. And I think this is where relationships show up in money, right? Because clearly this sounds like a verbally abusive, she didn't speak to any physical abuse, but at least a verbally abusive environment. And so that abuse word comes through in the question, could this be considered financial abuse? And if the story wasn't here about all of the drinking and fighting and guilt tripping, I would call that more of financial control and maybe even manipulation, which I suppose you could translate into the word abuse. So part of the story is also that, his parents guilted him into coming to this trip he didn't have money for, paid for him, decided to extend the trip. He couldn't because he's a college student. He has his own responsibilities. And he told them, I still need to leave on the day that we originally said that I needed to leave. And so his only option was to get a bus ticket. And his parents offered to pay for the bus ticket. He asked and they said yes. But then they came back and said, oh, we spent the money to extend our trip, so we can't pay for your bus ticket back. It's almost like, yes, I will help you get back on time. Oh, just kidding. We don't have the money because we spent it to extend the trip. And so that's like, I would call that financial manipulation and financial control. And that, again, is a really hard situation. And it's also hard to distinguish. This is the toxicity that's going on with these relationships, these interfamily relationships. And money it sounds like, is tethering him to a toxic situation because he needs it to survive, to get through college, to even create the foundation for himself. So yeah, establishing boundaries in a situation like this is a real self challenge. Like, imagine being 23 years old and having to assert your boundaries to your toxic parents, and also at the same time being scared that you're going to lose your financial lifeline to like life, and how do you have that conversation with your parents about, look, I love you guys, but you guys are a hot, toxic mess. And I don't want to be involved, because part of what the writer says too is that he's decided to discontinue these trips with his parents altogether. Like, he's had enough and he doesn't want to go on these trips anymore. That's a challenge for a 23-year-old to be able to identify the boundaries, separate the money from the relationship, and come to the table to have that conversation. So let's shift it a little bit and talk about financial control. When somebody has financial control over you. So I'm going to detach it from the college student, because I feel like that's a subset of people that has a different response than, say, somebody who's a full-blown adult and still depending on other people for financial stability or being able to live life. When anybody relies on anybody else financially, I think one of the really important things to keep in mind and be aware of is, don't let yourself become enabled and depend on it. Let it be circumstantial and have a plan to disconnect from that financial reliance from anybody, because that can absolutely happen. When somebody is so used to other people helping them financially, they stop aspiring to be financially independent. And whether you're a college student, whether you're adult working a minimum wage job, whether you're adult working a fine job and you're just used to it, there's always a way. I can find a story anywhere that in this case, a college student who maybe their parents didn't even have the means to help them through college, but they made it happen through grants, through loans, through hustling. And I think that's a really big one. If you want true financial independence, you have to recognize that line where you enable yourself, where you get comfortable because you have people helping you and filling in the gap, the financial gap. And so you stop looking for ways to fill that gap yourself. So also accepting the reality that when you accept financial assistance from people, you to some extent are giving them power. And in this story, that's exactly what's happening. The parents are exerting their power over their son using money. And yeah, if you look at the parents' financial story just within this, in and of itself, they don't have money for a bus ticket, but they have money for cases of beer and weekend trips and extending the vacation. The math doesn't math that these parents could extend a trip, support their drinking habit, and not be able to afford to help their son get back on a bus with a bus ticket. So all of this to me just screams control, financial control. And here's what I think the son and the girlfriend need to hear. You have to understand what you are compromising when you accept financial support and rely on financial support from other people. And that's not to say that there's a season for everything, because these kids are young. They're still in college. They do need help. But I think taking back their power means figuring out how they can detach themselves, because you're not just sacrificing, you're not risking losing the financial support. You're risking learning toxic ways to manage and exert control using money. You're risking your own self-worth, your own belief systems around how am I compromising myself to make sure that I have enough money? And you're also limiting yourself from finding other ways to establish your own financial independence. That's another challenging thing. So now let's look at just the writer, who's the girlfriend of the boyfriend. And at the end, she says, I don't know what to do or how to help him. I live with my mom too. So I think moving in there wouldn't work because that's just too many people in a house. So also understanding the boundary in relationships. And I think she's coming from a great heartfelt place, being like, I want to help him and I want to, do these things. And I don't know, she doesn't speak to how serious the relationship is, if they plan to get married or anything like that. And I think it's really noble to want to step over and step up and really help him. But at the same time, boundaries have to be established within a relationship. At what point do you financially extend yourself for someone who you don't even know if you're going to start getting married, if you're going to get married or what your future holds? Like, how far do you extend yourself in these undeveloped relationships to help the other person financially? Because another thing that she needs to keep in mind is, what tendencies, even passively, unconsciously, is he taking on from his parents? And are those tendencies that she wants to deal with and manage? And he could see it for everything it is, for all I know, and not want to aspire to be anything like them in any way. Right? What is he doing? Because she's taking on the responsibility to make it right. Right. So like a question that I would want to dig into that this doesn't speak to is, what is he doing to take back his power? What is he doing to fill the financial gap that, if his parents was to stop giving him money, he would have to figure out how to make that money, because it is possible. People do it. It sucks and you have to work really hard and sacrifice a lot of things. And it does require, to some degree, the hustle, which comes with sacrifices that equate to time. Right. So I think that's another thing for her to keep in mind. How is he stepping up to the plate? And is it her job to overextend herself and compensate for if his parents take the financial resources away? All right, am I the asshole for not wanting to give my brother more money? So here's the situation. My brother is in a rough spot financially, and he came to me a few months back asking for help. I ended up giving him $2,400, which was a big deal for me, but he was struggling and I wanted to help him out. He promised, of course, that he would pay me back, and I really believed him at the time. But now, fast forward, and I haven't seen a single dollar. He's telling me he's still in a rut and, surprise, asking for more money. And again, he's giving me that same line, I'll pay you back, don't worry. I know he means it when he says it, but it's becoming clear that I might just never see that money again. I feel like I'm the family ATM at this point, and honestly, I'm tired. I feel guilty though. I keep thinking, what if this time is different? He's my brother, and I don't want to abandon him when he's struggling. But at the same time, I'm trying to manage my own finances and can't just keep handing out money. Every time I think about saying no, I feel like a bad sibling. But every time I say yes, it's like I'm setting myself up for more disappointment. Am I the asshole if I just put my foot down and refuse to give him more money? Part of me thinks I'm justified, but I feel the guilt is real. My short answer to any question like this is no, you are not an asshole for protecting your financial independence. My theory on lending money is, first of all, if it's going to hurt you and put you in a place that jeopardizes your financial stability to lend money, don't do it. Because if lending money or helping somebody financially makes or breaks the relationship, I think there are other factors going on in that relationship that need to be addressed outside of the temporary money fix. So there are three kind of factors that play into this because it's never like a super crystal clear yes or no answer, right? And the first factor is you have to consider the person that you're lending the money to. What have they exhibited up to this point when it comes to money? Is it someone who always asks for money and when the ATM of one person runs dry, they move on to the next person? Are they putting effort towards doing it on their own? Right? There's a saying that comes from the Bible. Don't give a man, I think it comes from the Bible. Don't give a man a fish, teach a man how to fish. Are you lending money to somebody who is learning how to fish, attempting or willing to learn how to fish and put themselves in a position to where they don't have to ask for it again? For example, if it's someone who made really good money and had the ability to set aside like an emergency fund but chose not to, are they willing to learn from that and do different? Like, is it somebody who you know has the hustle? They're truly in a bad place, but they have exhibited proof in the past that they're completely motivated and capable to go out and find a new job or hustle their way towards financial independence again, right? Is there proof in their past that they're the type of person that's going to go get it and keep their word in paying you back? So that's factor number one. Consider the person that you are lending money to. And then you have to consider, what if you don't get it back? And so that's like a personal theory of mine. I never lend money, and I'm not willing to lend money that I'm not okay with getting back, because especially with the people that ask me for money that I truly value their relationship, I don't even put myself in a position to expect it back. That's also how I do charitable contributions. So I don't donate a whole lot to nonprofits, for example, because I've seen their public 10Ks, their public financial statements, and non-for-profits are hiding behind profits and it's all going to the CEOs. They're not doing what they say they're going to do. So for me, my charitable contribution is giving money to people who I know need it and I know are going to appreciate it and use it. And so you have to ask yourself, what happens if you don't get it back? And this is a perfect example. This is her brother, and it sounds like she really genuinely loves him, cares for him, and wants to see him do well. But and words are so powerful. So if we pick out some of the words in her story here, her not getting that money back is cultivating feelings of resentment, cultivating feelings of questioning the integrity of the relationship. And is it worth you risking the relationship should you not get that money back? And then the setting boundaries. And this goes hand in hand with it. What if you don't get it back? Like, first, you really have to ask yourself that question and be like, what are the repercussions if I don't get this back? And also, coming to the table before you give them the money and saying, hey, let's talk about the expectation of when I'm going to get it back. What is the payment schedule going to look like? And this, by the way, is not unfair, because if you don't have anybody in your life that has money to lend you, where do you go? You go to a bank, you go to a lending company, a lending website. Anytime you borrow money through not a person, you are expected to start paying it back on a very specific date, and you have a set frequency, and you're paying interest. So you're paying back more than you borrowed. And so it's really a plug to have somebody in your life that can lend you money in the first place. So it's not unfair to clarify before you give somebody money the expectation of, when is it reasonable for me to expect you to start paying it back? And going so far as discussing what happens if you don't pay me back. So the long and the short of this question is that it's an incredibly tough question, but this is where I appreciate money for how it can stretch us and how it offers up reflection in other areas of life. And for this one in particular, communication and boundaries. Do you find it hard to come to the table and communicate with someone like your brother? Hey, I want to lend you this money. I want to help you, but it's going to put me in a bad place financially if you don't pay me back. So can we compromise and agree on when you're going to pay me back? How often you're going to be able to make payments? What's your plan? And what's going to happen if you don't pay me? So communication shows up a lot in money. And number two is accountability and boundaries, taking accountability for the fact that anytime you are lending money, you are risking not getting it back. And are you willing to own the results of that? Right? Are you willing to look far enough down the road of possibility? If my brother doesn't pay me back, am I going to harbor feelings of resentment? Is it going to taint our relationship? And do you have the assertiveness where if $2,400 is going to put you in a place that you aren't willing to go, do you have the assertiveness to come to the table and say no? No is a complete sentence, and you are entitled to know when somebody asks you for money, which may also present an opportunity for you to reflect depending on how that person reacts to you saying no. Because the truth of the matter is, it is not your obligation to risk your financial stability for anyone. It's a choice that you can absolutely say yes to, but it is not your responsibility, no matter who the person is. So these are always tough ones because people that lend other people money truly come from a great place, but we have to think a few steps down the road of possibility and make a decision that we're going to be okay with. So my biggest advice for lending money is do not lend money that you can't be okay with not getting back, and look at the other pieces of the relationship of the person that you are lending money to. Who are they? What have they shown in the past as far as the likelihood that they're actually going to pay you back? You have to consider if you don't get it back. Are you willing to live with the consequences of not getting it back? And for example, is that a relationship you're willing to lose should you not get it back and you harbor feelings of resentment? And also make sure you're considering your boundaries and communicating them. This is a really great way to challenge your communication skills and your boundaries.
Ooh, all right, guys, that was deep and intense, and I'm sure it hit some of you pretty hard. But I hope this conversation sparked some new insights and maybe even challenged the way you think about money and relationships. But this is not just a one-way conversation. I want to hear from you. If you have an Am I the Asshole question, head on over to our website, moneymastery.work, find the podcast page, and submit your questions. I would love to answer them. Let's talk about it. So, if you have a money question that's been weighing on your mind, a financial dilemma you're navigating, or maybe even a wild money story that needs to be unpacked, send your questions my way. Because trust me, if you're wondering about it, somebody else probably is too. And if you love today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep rewriting our money stories together. So until next time, remember, it is always and never about the money. See you soon. If you liked this episode, be sure to show us some love by subscribing and turning on those notifications. You can find me on Instagram under The Money Whisper, and also where we encourage you to contribute, to join the conversation, ask questions, and share your thoughts so we can create more episodes tailored exactly to what you want to know about money. I'm your host and your personal money whisperer. Until next time, remember, it is always and never about the money.